We're sitting down and talking with Dr. David Klein about hearing loss. What's that all about?
Well, I don't know. I've got a renewed interest in hearing loss, a renewed interest in dealing with it, a renewed interest in preventing it. So, why? Okay, well, very recently, like just several days ago, I got my second set of hearing aids. And I hadn't had hearing aids for 20-some years. I did not like them then because they tickled the inner portion of my ears and actually made me nauseated, so I couldn't take them. It was a very expensive mistake.
Ooh.
So in any event, the hearing loss progresses. It gets worse. My communication skills diminished. It's just the way these things go. And I succumbed to pressures, social pressures, domestic pressures, to go ahead and get myself evaluated for hearing aids. Well, I was kind of surprised at how this worked out. I went to an audiologist. They checked it out. I ended up with a 40, 45 decibel loss. That's fairly substantial. Not terrible, but bad enough. And then I went ahead and figured, well, I'm going to get a second opinion. So I had it done again, and wouldn't you know it, they ended up with a very, very different audiometry. This one was a little bit worse. So I'm thinking, well, maybe there's a little bit of voodoo in this audiometry, and I suspect that there probably is. But what I realized was that when I went for the second audiometry, I hadn't taken my nutraceuticals for a week, and my hearing diminished. It's very, very interesting. So I'm, in any event, be that as it may, what is it that causes diminished hearing loss or diminished hearing acuity? And there's some things that we're doing in our society that are very, very easily remediable. There are some things that we're doing that are avoidable. The one thing that we can't seem to do is to avoid the environmental noises that, as we're driving down the street. You get in your car, and it's shocking how loud the vehicles are. It's shocking how much noise is going on around you. Okay, loud noises cause hearing loss chronically. If you go to the audiologist, they'll ask you, well, have you been exposed to gunshots? Well, the answer is yeah, actually. Many of us have. Explosions, so on and so forth. But oddly enough, when I did all that stuff, I wore ear protection. When I was a professional musician, I wore ear protection. It's not something that a lot of people do. They didn't do it then. I did because I valued my senses, my sensitivities, and so on and so forth. So I wore hearing protection. It's just the way these things went. But we are doing things to ourselves these days, which is insane. And one of my favorite things are these earbuds. You see people jogging down the street, okay, with music cranked up in their ears, directly damaging their hearing. And they do it as if there's not a care in the world. I mean, that's bad enough, okay, that you're doing damage to your hearing, but you're also endangering yourself. When you have these things plugged in your ears and you're jogging down the street, you can't hear a car around you. Now, on my motorcycle, okay, I have a loud exhaust pipe on it. I like having a loud exhaust pipe. You know why? Because they can hear you around. Okay, loud pipes save lives. They do, and that's just the way these things go. You put lights on the motorcycle so people can see you, particularly from the sides. The cops don't like it. Too bad. Keeps you alive. But why we induce our own hearing loss, I don't know. As we get older, other things can happen in addition to exposure to loud noises. Okay, and this can also lead to chronic hearing loss. There's something called otosclerosis, which is a type of arthritis. This is what I have. Okay, and the hardening of the bones within the ears is causing the hearing loss. The anti-arthritics, the anti-inflammatories actually make your hearing better. And so had I not done 2 audiometries, which is not my favorite thing in the world to do because I value those hours in the doctor's office, tremendously. I'd rather be doing anything but being in a doctor's office, having done it for 10 to 12 hours per day for the last 37 years. But you can actually improve your hearing by taking your anti-arthritics, not necessarily the NSAIDs, because they too can cause tinnitus, but your fish oil, your MSM, the medications along those ilk, bromelain for that matter, will help your hearing. Did it with me in any event. So my experience with hearing has been very, very interesting. So I got my hearing aids. You might ask, okay, well, the experience was very interesting. I went to Costco to do this. I did it kicking and screaming. Going to Costco, I love their meat. Their vegetables are fantastic. I go to their pharmacy. They're great. But getting your hearing aids there sounded like you would go there to get your teeth work done. I mean, it just didn't seem right until my brother-in-law out in Texas told me that he went and got his hearing aids at Costco, and it worked out pretty well for him. So I figured, well, if it's good enough for him, he was the president of a pharmaceutical company. He's not a dummy. Okay, so I went ahead and had it done. It was 1/4 of what they cost me 20 years ago, and the darn things are incredible. You can't see them. I'm not wearing them right now because I need to be doing this. If I put the headsets on, there's a little bit of feedback involved. But I can now hear things. I went out. Unbelievable. I could hear what people were saying about me. Okay, and that it didn't work out so well for me, actually, the truth be told. I was rather ignorant to these things before, but you just it's worth doing. Now, why do I really care, and why am I making a point of it here? Because it seems to be that when you're sensory deprived, whether it's sight, whether it's hearing, or whether it's touch, your brain diminishes. Your ability to think diminishes. There are people out there that go through books of Sudoku, but they don't listen to music. There are people out there that'll learn to play chess, but they don't use their eyesight properly. Okay, they're not engaging in what's going on around them. And my mother, when she passed away, she couldn't see or couldn't hear. Okay, now can you imagine that the type of passing that is if for 10 years you can't see or hear anything? What does that do to the brain? So in any event, I figured I've grown attached to my brain, so I'm going to do the best that I can to keep it. So I went ahead and got my hearing checked one more time and got the hearing aid set in. Absolutely fantastic. Now, what else can you do to damage your hearing? And if you know what you can do to damage it, you'll know what to do to avoid it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if you're going out on the shooting range, it's a great idea to spend that $14 on those ear protectors. Brilliant. But what about those individuals with nail guns on the roofs? You don't see too many of them with them. They'll wear eye protection, but they're not doing anything to protect their ears. What about the individuals in the body shops? What about the individuals in the automotive shops? I was a mechanic before I was a doctor. Okay, and they're in there with impact wrenches. Bam, 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 bam. Very, very loud. The damage is incredible. When I was with the Navy, we paid a lot of attention to hearing loss, but in the civilian sector, people do not. Buying your own protectors is very, very wise and very inexpensive. You don't necessarily have to have the ear sets. Oh, you don't have to go that route. You can get the little plugs that go in there for just a few dollars. You can get the wax pieces for even less. But protecting your ears is something that I wish I had done a better job of earlier on, and it's something I encourage you to do now. What else can you do to damage your ears? Well, oddly enough, the non-steroidals, those medications that we use to treat arthritis, can damage the ears. Antibiotic use can damage the ears. Chemotherapy can damage the ears. Toxins of many, many natures will cause this sort of an issue. So what else can we do to look at hearing loss? You're going to go, well, my hearing's fine. I can't this and I can't that, until you ask the people around you, are they able to communicate with you? When you can't hear contractions, and for those of you that don't remember, that's the T at the end of can. There's a big difference between can and can't, or, it's just the way that it goes. And if you can't hear that T, you didn't communicate very effectively. Tinnitus, which also begins with the letter T, brought to you by the letter T, okay, is something that plagues many, many people, causing hearing loss or causing their inability to hear. Okay, I have tinnitus also from the Meniere's, which is what caused the initial hearing loss. The new hearing aids actually help counterbalance the tinnitus. It's remarkable.
Interesting.
So what do I think? These little puppies cost me $1,600, and it's worth every nickel I spent on it. Got to tell you, this is one of the best things I ever did.
I see people with the earbuds, and I stay away from them. I oftentimes will use headphones, like Bose headphones.
Sure.
Because my thought is, and it's probably, I don't know, could be right, is that the bud just traps all the air, all the atmosphere out, and it's forcing all this vibration into the ear, but there's nowhere for it to come out.
Well, okay. Now, have you ever taken the grill cloth off a speaker?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what you want to do, to prove this to yourself, how much damage you're doing, take the grill cloth off a speaker, okay, and then crank up the bass on something, and you can actually see the speaker moving in and out.
Yeah. Boom, boom,
okay.
boom.
You're rapidly, about 600 times a second at the low range. It gets up about 2,000 cycles, at mid range. But the speakers will start to move in and out. That's air moving. Okay, so it's a lot like a Johnny plunger for your commode, what these things do to your eardrum. Okay?
Yeah.
It is bad news. When you have your eardrum ruptured from an explosion, it's from the movement of the air, the overpressure from the explosion. It's a low frequency is what does this. If you want to damage your speakers, plug them in and plug them out. These inaudible thumps is what we used to call them in the industry. Okay,
Yeah.
Engineers, you'll know what I'm talking about. Very, very low frequency, very, very large wavelength. Okay, so the longer the wavelength, okay, the more the speaker will move. It's just the way these things go. High frequency, you can't even see the little suckers vibrate. Low frequency, they're all over the place. But look at these dumb kids in their cars out on the road. They've got these little Japanese cars, Korean cars, boom, 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 boom. The music makes your chest heave, and they're in the car next to you. What do you think that's doing to their ears?
Oh, amen.
What do you think it's doing to their brain? Okay, it's getting shaken every time that these things bounce through. There's a little wonder that they can't speak clearly and intelligently. Maybe they started off the way, I don't know.
Dr. Klein, suffernomore.com, suffernomore.com, and check out stagesoflifevitamins.com, stagesoflifevitamins.com.